I hope you have a good reason for pulling me off that RAF gig.
Absolutely. This operation is crucial to Project Iceberg.
Why are you even talking to me? You're taking an awful risk.
Nonsense. They may be expecting defectors, but not the kind of hardware you're carrying.
Ihre Papiere bitte.
The locator chip indicates the sleeper is in position. Are you familiar with him?
Who could forget that handsome face?
Welcome, well-disposed viewers, to the Cold War. Just a short recap. We saw the intro at the end of the first episode, which is about a mysterious organization called Beholder, an agent called Valhalla, some project called Iceberg. The Russians, the British, and the Americans are somehow involved in it. And now we are with Agent Kingfish in the GDR. Like you can see here, we're at a border checkpoint. At this side, it's the GDR. And Sie betreten den britischen Sektor. You are entering the British sector. So this way, there is the West Berlin sector controlled by the British. So we're in Berlin, the melting pot of the Cold War. And this operative, Kingfish, is part of the Beholder initiative. We don't know much more than that at this point. And we are supposed to help him escape into the British sector. And you've seen in the intro, so the British are somehow involved in the plans of the Beholder organization, but we really don't know anything about that yet. So, I will try to be brief on this tutorial, because most of the gameplay I will introduce in the following 2 episodes, most of the tactic gameplay that is, because the tutorial always tells you what to do and it grays out a bunch of stuff, so I can't really go into depth here, but it's the beginning of the story and introduces basic gameplay, so I thought it will be a good thing to include it. Like you know from other games in this genre, you have split movement. You have 2 movement points that are called action points in this game. And you can use 1 to walk or 2 to sprint and use the full distance. Unfortunately, they have both the same outline color for the outline, so at times it's really like if I'm going here or stuff, sometimes it's not as good to see if you're where the outline of your 1 and 2 movement is, because the outlines are in the same color, but be that as it may. So, we are sprinting over here, basically having our 2 action points. The orange point is called a fire point. Now, I used to call those movement points and this an action point, because you actually use this point to do most of your actions, but you also use movement points for some stuff, but you use the fire point for abilities as well, so it's not really used to only fire. So the terminology here is a bit glitchy, so I stick to action points and fire points the way it's mentioned in the game manual to not get things confused. Okay, you see this outlined red area, that is a forbidden area that will lead to trespassing. As you see, if I move the mouse into this area, there is a red triangle with an exclamation mark warning us that being seen within this area will trigger an alarm. Same goes if you use certain objects like this console that we're going to use in a second. And if people see you, guards that is, that will raise an alarm. So this triangle basically means suspicious activity. And you see the guard has a certain area of view that is shown with these darker tiles. So you should not let him see you. And same goes for surveillance cameras. I mean, we're in Eastern Germany, which was basically pretty much a state that relied on secret police work to somehow keep it together. So everything is under surveillance. We might want to avoid being seen.
Gehen Sie weiter.
Who is this Agent Deadpan your file spoke about?
The latest CIA washout. Could be dangerous.
I sincerely doubt that.
So, we have interactables on this map, like this console. There are a few others that always triggers some effect. In this case, we're gonna turn off the camera.
Deal with the security quietly. We don't want unnecessary trouble.
Thank you. I can handle myself.
I will always pause talking when the flavor texts are incoming, so you can enjoy the full ride. Okay, we're gonna enter the main building right here, and since it's the tutorial, we can just do that, because otherwise we're still in restricted area. That is a bold approach we're taking right here, but the tutorial, of course, is orchestrated perfectly.
Found our puppet.
Give him the control phrase.
Which is like, because it is orchestrated perfectly, it is, like I said, not the best to show everything, because you only can click what you're supposed to use, and you can't really show people around or experiment around with stuff. But that's what the second mission is for. So we can now take control of this enemy guard, which is actually a sleeper agent. Of course, we're in the Cold War, everybody is an agent. And now we can use our fire point to activate an ability. That's why I said it's not really a fitting name, but whatever, to gain control of this agent. You see here, cooldown 3, 1 fire point. So I'm not really sure if we just brainwashed him or if that's just an animation. But alright, now, like you know from other games in the genre, we have a multi-layer map, so we're not just down here, but our next step is up here in the second floor, where we will use another ability that is introduced within the tutorial, the takedown. So we're basically gonna knock out the West German Customs Guard, or West German Customs whatever, and this will cost 1 fire point and 50 awareness. Now, awareness is the resource, so to speak, that chats this game from XCOM. I will cover that in a second. Or if I don't cover it in a second, I'm not really sure yet. I'm going to cover that in the 4th episode, where I do the combat stuff, because people will be looking for it there. So if you have questions about awareness, that is the lower bar underneath your HP, your hit points, go skip to the 4th episode. So the reason our sleeper agent is able to just go up here and do what he wants is because he is disguised. That is shown by this clothing over the hit point bar, so nobody gets suspicious because he's of course dressed like he belongs in this restricted area. So the takedown. We just knocked out the guard. I actually recommend to not do that from the front. Even in the game, I'm under the impression that if you hit people from right up front, they will still trigger the alarm. So I've had that experience. So in the game, I try to use the side or do it from behind, but like not walk up to them to punch them in the face, because
Need me?
I have had bad experiences with it, and I don't know why it works here. But I'm not 100% sure on that one, but I try to avoid it if possible. Now another ability is introduced, the support, which is basically a mechanic that has other agents that are outside the map help you on your missions. I will cover that in the 5th and 6th episode, because this is something you can later acquire on the strategy part of the game, and you only have a certain amount of agents you can take to each mission, and you can get a tactical advantage by using people positioned outside of the actual map to support you, so you get an even greater advantage. And this is our tactical spotter that is positioned in the east. At the beginning of the mission, you have to choose, of course not in the tutorial, but like in a regular mission, you have to choose at which part of the map he is positioned, north, east, west, or south. And he can only spot in a direct line from his position. So he is stationed in the east now. He can only spot from the east. So if there is a room or an area without any windows from the east, he will not be able, you see the blinds are closed, he cannot use his spot here. He has to have a direct line of sight. So that's why positioning him in the right direction is important. But of course this is the tutorial, and he is sitting in the east, which is very handy for us.
We located the documents, but we'll have to breach the room.
Don't worry. I'll clean the mess after you.
Okay, so our off-the-map support agent spotted the room, which comes in handy because we see what we're dealing with here. And you've heard the Valhalla guy in the flavor text, which is in radio contact with Kingsfish, the operative on scene. You remember Valhalla from the introduction video. He's the one that dropped the name Project Iceberg and was obviously a huge part of, well, I don't know if he's the mastermind behind the operation, but he shot a guy he considered subordinate, so he must be somewhere up the food chain. Now, this is an option that is, I don't know if it's new to the genre. I've never seen it before, but I think it's very handy. It's the breach option. So, if you have 2 or more, you can do this with, I don't know how many agents that you position around the doors of a room. You can now move in like a tactical team and take out the unsuspecting enemies. And the reason that's a good idea is because you will do full damage because they're unsuspecting and out of cover. And I think you even get a damage boost. So we will... it's just a very neat way to take out groups of enemies in a single blow. And you see we are doing 75 damage on guys that have 35 hit points. We're gonna do that again in episode 4. and there we're doing even around 90 damage, and so that's just huge amounts of damage you deal because you surprise unsuspecting enemies. So we're gonna breach.
Coming through.
Quick blood work here. And as you see below, alarm was raised because shots have been fired, unsuppressed shots. So we can move around trespassing in these areas without raising any suspicion, but if somebody finds incapacitated guard, if unsuppressed shots are being heard or something like that, that will immediately break the infiltration mode that was displayed up here. So before that everybody was unsuspecting, and I don't want to relate everything in this game to XCOM because it's a game which tries to be something else, and I think it is. But like in XCOM 2 you have this you have a similar thing. Your operatives are hidden at the beginning, and as soon as you are discovered, like the infiltration, the unsuspecting behavior of your enemy goes away, and that of course seems to fit pretty well in this agent scenario. So now we're opening a vault.
We've got the customs papers.
Good. Head to the evac zone. The driver will take you directly to Glasgow.
Copy. Over and out.
And we stole some custom papers that I cannot piece in 100% with the story. I don't know if they're for if it's something to do with the ship from the introduction scene, if it's about smuggling stuff between East Berlin and West Germany, but we are to proceed to the British zone, and then the driver's gonna drive us to Glasgow. So basically this is the story so far. Now we're gonna get our excavation vehicle here. Evac zones in Phantom Doctrine are fixed. You cannot call the vehicles any way you want them. Oftentimes you have more than one option on the map, but these options are predetermined and you can just choose the best option for you. But luckily, and as I said, the tutorial of course does that for us. The evac zone is right a window that we just it's right where we need to get out. So now we're going to set up Overwatch. This is a well-known mechanic in those games. It does work a bit differently because you actually have to, you have like a cone, a kill zone so to speak, and you have to like pick a zone of control that you want to cover with your Overwatch shot. You're not basically covering everywhere you see. You know, you look in one direction and you can shoot only that way. And depending where you set like the Overwatch point, it's a larger area. And in this scenario, we're covering a small area because guess where the guards will be coming from. But you see, the agent now turned this way, so he wouldn't know if anybody is down there. But like a good team, Rook has his back. So now basically you see we have the highlighted kill zone of the operative we have currently selected, and then we have Kingfish, who is covering this smaller zone. Masterfully planned. Who would have thunk, huh? But in all seriousness, you see now the whole base is onto us, so we're proceeding to the evac zone. And now the basic, the direct fire mechanic is introduced, so we had our overwatch shot, but of course we can fire directly at an enemy. There are different shot modes and a bunch of stuff down here, but all that is covered in episode 4 because the tutorial is very strict on everything. Now basic sidearm fire is introduced. So each agent is carrying a main gun and a sidearm. And in this case it's a pistol. It can also be a submachine gun, and there's even the possibility to give your agents 2 large two-handed weapons. But I will cover that in episode 5, why that is probably not a good idea. So in short, you should always have a two-handed and a one-handed weapon. So now we're introducing sidearm fire on the West German customs guy. The writing here is yellowish, which means he is in half cover, like you can see here. If these damage numbers and the target name is in green writing, then he is out of cover or flanked, and if it's in red, he is in full cover. So you can use these colors as indicators on how well protected the target is. And the headshot attack fire a selected enemy at a selected enemy with a devastating shot that ignores cover protection. So we're now gonna fire at him, and his half cover bonus will be negated, and this costs awareness, but again, details will be found in episode 4 on that subject. And you see it did 95 damage, so pistols are not necessarily dealing less damage than big two-hand weapons. You just have, it really depends on the situation that you use them in. Okay, now we're gonna proceed to the evac zone.
Mission objective complete.
And that was basically the tutorial mission in the game. And the second episode that just covers the basic gameplay features introduced here with a little bit of stuff around it. And actual tactical gameplay advice and tutorial will be happening in episode 3 and 4. So stay along for that, and see you in a bit.